And we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of MMA and Coffee. On this episode, it's going to be a recap of UFC 217. All right, I'm with Zack tonight, and we're going to talk about the fights. Where do we begin? Uh, Honestly, when I think about this card, and I mean, we pretty much have watched almost all of the pay-per-views since UFC 100, and
A little bit before,
a
but
little bit
yeah,
before. But as far as like a fight, I for sure remember, like
right,
when we got into watching the events, and
yeah. Which we backtracked and watched almost all the old ones too. Now,
yeah. So looking back, other than the Ronda Holly Holm fight, this might have been one of my favorite cards just to watch live.
mm,
Like just
yeah. I
especially
mean,
the main card. Like
from top to bottom, and this is what sets it apart. It was three title fights that were on it, and they all lived up to it. And I mean,
upsets,
all
and there were finishes, and there was no boring fights. I mean, we had the Wonder Boy Masvidal
although
fight, but that was technical. I
calling
mean,
GSP Bisping an upset is kind of a. I mean, the champ lost, but GSP was actually barely a favorite, so that's not. It wasn't a true upset, I guess. But
there was just such a big
there's a lot around that
unknown.
fight.
There was such a big unknown with that fight because he had
Yeah,
been out so long. We didn't know
yeah,
what he was going to look like. He was in a
yeah.
different weight class. Um, Takeaways from that fight was his experience,
Well,
man.
you want to just run through the main card?
Yeah, uh, Johnny Hendricks, dad
Who
bod.
ironically was GSP's last opponent, right?
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, the years have
Yeah,
not been good to him.
yeah,
The
yeah.
guy he was fighting was huge. He didn't even look like a middleweight.
Well, it's so weird, right? And they're both the middleweight too, which is
Yeah,
a one sense. But like, what's so weird about it is think of the context of 4 years ago. GSP was like, had all these title defenses. I think like nine, right? Anyway, so Johnny is like this young guy that's like coming up, which I know their ages aren't that different, but like perspective here at the time, right? Is Johnny's this young, hungry guy. He's knocking people out. He's wrestling people. I honestly thought he was better than GSP in that fight.
I've
and
rewatched that fight, and I do think GSP won 3 rounds, but the 2 rounds Johnny won, he did way more damage.
Yeah,
It kind of reminds me of even Bisbing versus Hendo 2. Hendo won 2 rounds, but the 2 rounds he won, he like dropped him. You know, there were big rounds, but they
right.
weren't 10-8s. So, you know, the
Well,
champ still won.
I don't know. I can see the argument. I don't really want to get into arguing about that
Yeah,
fight right now.
it just
But
made me think of that fight.
yeah, yeah, I got
It
you.
was similar.
Well, it's funny to see like so that's the context of when it goes, and then GSP's the older guy, he retires, and then Johnny wins the belt, and then obviously all the stuff that happens later is just it's crazy because you're thinking of like, oh, Johnny's this young guy, he's coming up, he's taking the division, and look at how the fights went for him tonight. Like who would have expected this 4 years ago?
I think
Like
that those Robbie
wow,
fights, man, after the Robbie fights, it was like
it kind of
the
ruined both of them a little bit,
well,
honestly.
no, Robbie still had
He
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 hit
he,
he
he
had
hung
the
on longer, but
we had the
all the
Rory and Condit fight, and then
yeah.
other than the Woodley loss, he's came back, beat Cowboy, so he's not as bad as Hendricks. I just feel like after that second Lawler fight, and I think once he had got the belt, he
Yeah.
wasn't as hungry. You know.
Oh, he was hungry. He's been eating.
Oh my god. That was a
No,
great.
I know.
That was a
I
great.
agree. I agree. He's not as
Uh,
you could tell like his whole
Like he
like
did what he wanted to do, be
like
champ.
then he had to rematch him, right?
Yeah.
And you could tell he kind of didn't want to, and it was just ever since then ever since he won the belt in his first fight, he got hurt. Remember that? He got hurt. And maybe that's what some of it was, because he's never been the same ever since that happened.
It just he don't even seem like motivated though. It's like he seems like he's doing the least amount of training to even take the fights. He's not coming in
Yeah,
like amazing shape.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like him. He's a likable guy when he talks and stuff.
Yeah, it's just weird seeing the downfall of him after being a champ, and
Yeah, he
he went
he
on a
looks
run.
he looks like a trucker, not a fighter. It's funny.
Oh,
Anyway,
right now we got two viewers. Thanks for joining in. Right now we're just talking about the main card. Talking about Hendricks. Um, Next fight was Wonderboy, Masvidal.
yeah, which was the worst fight on the main card, and honestly, it wasn't a bad fight.
I
You
think
know,
it was styles make fights. It was to me it was technical, and what we watched was Masvidal try to figure out Wonder Boy, but Wonder
and
Boy's
he couldn't.
style just
Yeah,
beats his style. Like he was faster, couldn't hit him. It's at some points it looked like Masvidal was like in like stuck in mud. The way he was moving, his movement was just so stiff and slow compared
he
to
was
Wonder Boy.
noticeably slower. Stuck in mud's a good little metaphor for
Yeah,
it.
it looked like he was stuck in mud swinging, and
He was
Wonder
just
Boy
standing
was
in one
dancing
spot.
around. Yeah, and Wonder Boy's dancing around him. So,
Yeah,
um, that was my least favorite fight. And honestly, Wonder Boy's in a weird position where as long as Woodley's the champ, I don't see him getting a
I don't know.
rematch.
Oh, he's got two losses. They were both close. They
They
weren't
weren't
particularly
exciting.
exciting. So unless he just starts knocking people out left and right, there's no way it would happen.
He's basically gonna have
Like
to beat all the people Woodley should fight and prevent
he's
Woodley
basically
from
yeah,
fighting him.
yeah.
He'll be like
It's gonna
Chuck to Tito for a
yeah.
while. He'll
Kind
be
of
like,
what Fitch
the,
was the GSP back in the day,
yeah.
and he's
Okay.
basically gonna have to be making title defenses of his own of no title, which who knows?
All right.
Maybe best thing that could happen for that division, honestly, and I'm not even saying it because I don't like Woodley, but I don't like Woodley. But if he lost, it would kind of open up a lot of the matchups.
The big thing is though, if I try to take my opinion of Woodley out of the equation, they haven't really like the two like Maya Wonder Boy. For him to play safe and win, it's just not going to be exciting. I understand he did what he had to keep the belt, but for him to be upset that fans didn't like the fight, he just shouldn't be surprised that fans are like, "Hey, that fight wasn't entertaining." So, like, he's not gonna win
Right?
fans
It's the
over
attitude.
that.
GSP title defenses weren't particularly exciting. A whole lot of them actually were boring, and people loved him because the way he handled criticism. He handled it way better. Like he was just like,
Yeah, I
well,
think he lets too much get to him,
yeah,
and he can't just keep it to himself.
you can't be
So,
like, fuck you if you didn't like my fight. Like that's not gonna win
well,
any
especially
fans.
when like he's not even like it's not even being like true. Like, okay, the fight wasn't exciting, and you're sitting here trying to argue with people saying it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he should have just been like, yeah, it wasn't exciting, but hopefully next fight I can put on a better performance. That's all he
Yeah.
had to say.
He has to know it wasn't exciting, right? Like
Yeah, like quit lying. Come on.
yeah. And anyway, let's
Moving
get to the
on
meat and potatoes of
to
this, the title fights.
to me the biggest shock of the event.
It really is.
JJ getting knocked out. I thought in the
The first
prediction
round.
in the first round in the
Couldn't even
prediction
hit her.
in the
Couldn't even hit her.
prediction in the prediction video, I thought if Rose was going to win, it would be by maybe a head kick, or she would have to hurt her early and get a submission, because I did think her biggest advantage was the submission. But it seems like she's still evolving, and honestly, like her last two performances, she's showing that she's still getting better, and I was like super impressed, shocked. I just don't think anyone was expecting that to happen.
No.
I mean, you could have wished for it, but I mean, to man,
Everyone figured maybe submission, but knockout.
I thought,
Like,
she, like I
I
said,
mean, I guess technically it was a submission, I guess, because she tapped for strikes. So it's
but it was a
actually,
punch that led it to all.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
left hook dropped her. Actually, she dropped her twice with the hook, and the second time is when she got the finish. I just wasn't expecting it, but it's so weird when, um, because before the fight, I think JJ was trying to hype the fight. She was trying to promote it, and Rose kind of wasn't having it. She wasn't engaging with her. So at one point, it felt like JJ was really forcing
yeah,
it, and then some of the stuff she was talking, it seemed like Rose was focused on the fight, and JJ had a lot of distractions. Like, she's talking about being undefeated. She's talking about, doing something after this fight, breaking Ronda's
yeah.
record.
It
She's talking
was,
about
it
all
was,
this stuff except the fight. So
it
it
was
just,
Rocky 3, man. It was Rocky 3.
what's funny too was right before Ronda lost to Holly, she was talking about wanting to retire undefeated, and then she lost, or almost when like people start calling people the greatest of all time. That's usually when they're more prone to lose. I guess because they start believing it, because
Yes.
they started calling
Well,
her the goat for the women, and then she.
GSP, and we'll get to the fight, but like the way he approaches like the the whole legacy aspect, because once you start winning a bunch of title fights, there's no way you can't think about your legacy, right? Like it's like in your face, like it's being thrown at you all the time, even if you don't want to think about it, like it's gonna creep in. But the way GSP handled it with, he never looked past his opponents. Like he would talk about it a little bit, but he was kind of level headed about it. He's like, well, the best way that I can like defend my legacy is if I take it one fight at a time. And obviously that approach has worked, and that's the way you should do it.
we we've never
You don't want to look,
seen
you never want to look past someone.
we've never seen him like talk about fighting someone after him or looking past him, or
Right.
you never even hear him say he is the greatest.
No, he,
So
he
he has the right mindset.
right. He just talks about how he wants to be. What's funny is he doesn't even really acknowledge that he arguably already is. You know what I mean? So
Right. Uh, okay, so moving on to co-main event. The, I heard the word bad blood so much
bad blood,
for
bad
this.
blood. Taylor Swift was singing in the background.
Dear God, no. So, so man, this fight lived up to the hype. I mean, it had it all. They both had their moments.
Yeah, I mean, if Cody lands that get rocks Dillashaw 30 seconds earlier, he might still be champ. You know,
Yeah, he might have got the finish. In many ways, you could say TJ
in that
was
first round.
kind of saved by the bell.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
watched the presser, and he basically was saying that he was being a little too predictable with his kicks. He was kind of like setting him up with punches, and Cody was already expecting it. And Cody's a good
yeah. Which
counter striker,
which
so
we
uh,
were talking about during the fight.
yeah.
Like, yeah, like
And
it was
two,
obvious to us watching it.
and then when he did catch him, he just threw it random. So his corner gave him good advice about just throwing. And then, man, I just wasn't. I was expecting, like when he did drop him with a kick, I was thinking, that would be the way for TJ to win this fight on the outside. Make it a technical fight, not brawl with Cody. But then he got into like a brawling exchange and dropped him. That was the.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what led to the finish. It was
Well,
crazy.
it's just great for bantamweight because, I mean, the whole story of basically bantamweight's entire existence is like Cruz is a dominant champ, then he gets hurt, and then he's gone for a few years, and he comes back and redeems himself, and Now he's kind of older. He lost and he's older, and I mean, who knows what he'll do? He's definitely winding down.
Well,
But this kind of turns the page where like we have this new young rivalry now, like because you're kind of wondering, well, where's bantamweight going without Cruz? Because it didn't really do so hot while he was
well,
gone. You know what
when
I
he was
mean?
gone, you had Burrell
Yeah,
and you had Faber still trying to get the
yeah.
belt, and then I
But
feel like a
everyone
lot
felt
of
like it wasn't the same because like, oh, is Barral really the champ? He never beat
yeah,
Cruz, you know?
it was like paper champs until now. Like it
Yeah.
feels like really the Cruz era can finally be put at rest until he like unless he gets the belt back. Like before, it felt like it was a chapter that hadn't been closed because he wasn't fighting.
Well, you've
Now,
got a new dynamic now. Like he's still part of the storyline, but the whole division, it's like finally moving forward because sometimes divisions don't really have a compelling champion or rivalry, and
just look at
it
Mighty
gets
Mouse right
stagnant.
now. Like the fact that
Yeah,
he has no rivals. He had
yeah.
Dotson, and Dotson left. He beat him. He won both those fights,
Benavidez,
and,
who
and
wrecked twice. So
yeah. So honestly, I do believe TJ and Mighty Mouse is the fight to make. TJ said that Mighty Mouse wants the money fights, or he wants the money. He's like, this is the fight to make, and I actually agree.
I mean, and that fight helps both weight classes. Like, because I know I've seen Mighty Mouse's thing where he's like, I don't want to just leave the division and all that. But like, it puts eyeballs on both divisions if they fight each other.
Honestly,
It's more eyeballs than ever.
if he moved up or if TJ moved down and he won, it would make his division
Better. It'll
it
make it look
better.
better.
It did just make it
Yeah.
look better. Now,
Yeah.
um, if he lost, then it might not. So
Right.
I don't
But
know.
then
I definitely
it
feel
depends on
like
if it stays or not, because then you have this whole dynamic. There's actually a rivalry there, so it still wouldn't. It at least would be
to
interesting.
me, him moving up and potentially fighting TJ, Cody, or a rematch with Cruz, way more interesting than fighting nobodies in his weight class. He's literally, you look at the top 10 in his weight class, he beat them all.
Yeah, literally.
He finished them. So,
I think the only
like,
one he hasn't fought is Formiga, right? Is like I think he's the only one in the top 10 that he hasn't fought.
I mean, and who's he? That's the
Yeah,
problem with him being the
he's
only
just
champ is
yeah,
there's and the history of it being so short that it just
yeah.
doesn't mean as much. Whereas you look at the
Well,
weight classes with longer history, you have more champs, you have bigger names. The fights just mean more, and he's a victim of maybe being ahead of his time in that division, where
circumstance.
like
Well,
everyone's trying to catch up to him. But
his legacy will age well because once he does finally retire, the whole storyline for flyweight is literally going to be, can any champ live up to the benchmark that the first champ set? Like,
right.
like what a hell of a benchmark to start off with. It's like being president after George Washington.
Well,
Like,
honestly, if you think of
right?
new divisions, it's kind of interesting, like, especially in the beginning of a division, like,
Yeah.
you'll have the champ where it's like long runs. It's kind of interesting. Like, think about,
Well, every division kind of has that, and that's how the
and once
benchmark
that
is
person's
like
gone, though, then it's like
it.
the
Yeah,
belt flip flops all over the place. So
think
it's either
think
back and
about it. Like
forth or.
you had Frank Shamrock light heavyweight, Miletich welterweight. All these divisions had guys early on that like Pulver and lightweight. Like they had a couple title defenses or four. I think four maybe for Shamrock and Miletich, but it set a like they're kind of victims of their time because they won all these fights and they didn't really have great competition. But then afterwards, you kind of looked at these guys and they're Hall of Famers. I don't think Pulver is. I don't know if he's
Well,
going to get in, but it set a benchmark for those weight classes, and it's kind of something to go by. And that's what Mighty Mouse will end up being. Except he's going to be literally the greatest like first champion ever.
I'm pretty sure once he leaves or loses the belt or whatever happens, you're
Yeah.
gonna have situations like, okay, once Ronda lost, the belt went through like three different people really quick.
Yeah.
Um, once Anderson lost, the belt kind of jumped around.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Since GSP retired, welterweights bounced around.
yeah, even what was it?
Light heavyweight had that era between Chuck and
Once
Jones.
once Tito and Chuck lost the belt, you had the belt jumping around.
Yeah.
Um, Jones held the belt for a long time, but there might be a chance where DC and the belt jumps around. You just don't know.
Well, you got to.
But you
DC's
either
already
have
older. He probably lose the belt.
you either have dominant champs, especially in the beginning of a division like JJ, um,
Yeah.
but eventually the division catches up and then it gets more competitive and you see the belt jump around, Styles making fights and stuff.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, because I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Rose won that, and then somehow she loses. She didn't even hold on to the belt. You know,
I mean, I wouldn't either.
That's how
Who knows?
crazy the sport is.
Who knows? So, Andrade could beat her, and that's probably the fight that gets made. So
I don't know. I think they might make the rematch.
they might. They shouldn't, but they might.
They might.
I think
Um,
if knocked out in the first round, he shouldn't get in this rematch.
I mean, consider she's other than as far as the
I
beat
just,
Rose, she's the only
I
champ.
just don't like it because it doesn't give any time for the fighters to change at all. It's like
I
the same
look.
fight
I
again.
agree. Was it? They were asking that like with DC and Rogan, they were talking about it, and Rogan mentioned Holly not fighting Ronda immediately, but um, he was like she didn't want to though,
That was
yeah.
they would Ronda would have got it if she wanted it. She just
She
wanted
didn't,
time
yeah,
off.
she didn't
Yeah,
want it, so it's different. Whereas JJ, she seems like the type that actually in the press conference she was saying that her plan
she already.
was to move up, but now she just wants to get her belt back and
Yeah,
avenge the loss. So you know,
sure. I think she should win at least one fight. That's just me.
yeah, it feels like though this is a little bit different from the Ronda Holly fight. That fight she just got destroyed. This fight was
Yeah.
so short that she could just be like, you know what, I got caught. Um,
She
I,
was getting cut on the distance though. I don't really feel like it was like that. It wasn't just like a freak knockout. Like she was losing. She was getting picked apart. It was weird. It was crazy.
yes and no, but what I'm saying is like whereas like the Holly, she just completely embarrassed her for a round and then brutally knocked her out. The fight was like 3 minutes.
Let's be honest. The only reason that she wouldn't get an instant rematch and Ronda would is because they knew it was money. Okay, like let's not even pretend it was
Well,
about anything else.
what I was gonna say though is let's compare like how when Connor lost to Nate, he can look back and go, okay, I knew I made this mistake, and I think if I fought him again, I have a chance of winning. You
Well,
know,
see, that's a different situation because he's winning the fight and just
what
gassed
what I'm
out. So
what I'm saying though
he at least
is
showed tools to win.
I could see JJ having the same mindset, being a competitor, and whereas Ronda is like, I don't know what she could have done. She got beat everywhere. You
Practice a
see,
double leg. I don't know,
what
but
I'm saying though is I could see JJ saying, I since the fight was so short, she could still believe that if the rematch happened,
I
it
mean,
wouldn't
I'm
be the
sure
same.
she does believe it. But who
Yeah,
doesn't? Like who? What fighter
Ronda
doesn't?
didn't.
Well,
You know,
I
so
guess she had never lost a fight before though, so I don't even think she knew how to deal with it.
right.
Anyway, I don't like the instant rematch. I don't care. I don't like it.
I think Andrade beating Claudia. She deserves the next title shot, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Make that
and
and Rose, and I don't know who JJ
if you
fights.
could match her up with someone she hasn't fought before, there's a few names out there.
What's her name? Um, Torres, Tisha. That's someone
Yeah,
who she
that'd
hadn't fought.
be a good one.
She hadn't fought
I'd
her,
watch.
so
Yeah,
That's a name. So
Yeah, and if Torres wins, then you got a title contender.
somehow we got talking back about that fight, and we were talking about TJ and Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of had
uh,
this is a round table, whatever. There's only
so,
two of us. So.
all right, let's get to
We were just jumping around weight classes and stuff.
the main event. Holy crap! Uh,
The goat. The goat.
okay, so first round, GSP looked amazing.
Yeah, like
When
he
he
shook the
said
ring
when
rust
he
off
when he said
one
he
kick.
when he said he looked that he was better than he ever been, I'm like, is he selling the fight? But then I know GSP is the type that he's very methodical. He wouldn't come back if he didn't know for sure that he could do it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you want to believe him, but then it'd been 4 years, so you're like, I don't know what we're gonna see, you know. And the first
like what
round,
fighter's gonna be like, well, I'm pretty shitty now, but I'm gonna come
dude,
back.
it's just like
Like no one
it's
say
just like
that.
every event the fighter goes, this was my best training camp. We've heard him
Rampage.
lie, dude. We've heard him lie so many times about their training camp being the best. So for him though, you know, he had a better track record. First round
Yeah,
looked amazing. Second round, he slowed down. It looked like
you know,
an adrenaline dump. Like he had real like
maybe he hadn't. He was fighting.
he went crazy, man.
He
The
was throwing a few wild kicks there, which that takes some energy out of you.
Yeah, spinning wheel kicks are like I don't like doing a
You
sprint.
know what he looked like? You remember how he was young? He threw a lot of kicks. He had more of that karate style. He was sort of in between, like when his super conservative wrestling and then his old school like kickboxing karate
Dude,
type
it
stand up.
was everything
He,
though.
he mixed it up. He mixed
He
his
was going
style.
for it with his punches. He was planting his feet, trying to knock Bisping out with his punches.
Yeah,
Like
and then he
he
used his wrestling when he needed to. In that third round, when he needed that wrestling to recover, he did it. He
okay,
took him down.
so the second round he looked like he had slowed down and it's like, uh-oh, Bisping's this is Bisping's world
Yeah,
now.
he won that.
When you
Yeah, he
slow
won that
down,
round, but the momentum shifted towards the end. Like you could tell he was getting tired.
yeah, and he was kind of like he made a face like crap, like he knew. But
Yeah,
okay, so this we were talking about goat. Okay, in this fight, I witnessed GSP use all of the experience of his past fights and just how long he had been fighting, and 5 round fights, title fights. Like he even admitted at points being hurt but not showing it.
yeah.
Okay, you going into the third round. He still hadn't caught his second win. He's kind of you can tell he's slowing down. He goes for the takedown. He gets it.
Which, by the way, Bisping had some impressive takedown defense up to that point. Like
Yeah,
he did do pretty well.
he's always had good takedown defense, but he knew going against GSP, so he had trained with some wrestlers. He was prepared, like as much as he could, you
He
know.
didn't look like I don't like if you didn't actually watch the fight. Don't think Bisping looked old. He looked just as good as he always did.
Yeah. So Bisping on his back is being more active than GSP, who's trying to recover, you know, trying to hit the second win, and actually cuts GSP up. And what was funny
Yeah,
was in the in the prediction too, I was saying like I wouldn't be surprised if both of them were bleeding. So the fact that like he cut him up, I'm like, oh, this is a GSP fight. He's gonna get some cuts on him. So, but during this time, GSP gets his second win, and he actually stands it up. And
you could tell he like kind of slapped his hands down and just stood up and like told Bisping to get up. And as soon as he did that, the fight it felt different. Like he took over the fight after that.
well, it's like he regrouped,
Yeah.
and then we had the exchange where, and thing is with him bleeding, it looked like uh-oh, this is going Bisping's way. You know, this
Bisping actually at that point was winning from the bottom. He was winning that round from the bottom, in my opinion.
Okay, so we got someone watching, and they said Michael Bisping versus Jorge Rivera 2, who wins? Does Rivera, is he even in the UFC anymore?
Man, I don't know. It's been a while since I watched Triple G.
honestly, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Bisping and Romero. Yo, Romero, since they got the little beef going on, you know.
Yeah,
If I could
I think that's a
imitate
terrible
Romero's accent, I would.
matchup.
Yo, Mike,
I
I
think
love you.
to answer the question, I think Bisping would win that fight.
Yeah.
But
Well, he finished Rivera back
yeah,
then, so.
which is that's a funny question, by the way. But
Well, just to let them know that we're looking at the chat, we do read the
yeah,
chat.
yeah,
Okay, uh, so if watching the fight, though, it looked like okay, this is going towards Bisping's way, which is making it kind of a dog fight, getting, you know, making a GSP work and get tired and make it sloppy, and then use his cardio and outpoint him. I thought
yeah.
that was Bisping's key to winning the fight, and then dude, GSP just starts going for it, planting his feet, just swinging, and he drops him. I'm like, what is going? What is going on,
Who is this man?
dude? And then he's like going for the finish, and then honestly, I thought at one point they could have stopped the fight from the strikes, but was it Big John?
Bisping was guarding.
He was. It was. You know what it was? Is like this is the main event. He was giving him plenty benefit of doubt.
Yeah, this was a big fight.
It was a huge fight, and
yeah,
and then GSP again had the experience to know to go for the submission, like, and not to
because for a second I'm like, whoa, it doesn't look like he was gonna finish him with them punches, and it's like, whoa, if Bisping survives this,
don't pull
GSP's got a problem.
I'm like, don't pull a Carwin and punch yourself out and then lose
in the next round because you're gassed. Yeah. Yeah, it was smart. He got that rear naked choke, and it was over.
Okay, I don't know if person watching's trolling now. Said McGregor versus Weidman. Can the UFC put this together in 2018? No. I think that if they try to put any other super fight, it will be TJ versus Mighty Mouse, and it might be Connor against GSP.
Yeah, at welterweight.
Yeah, so going back to the fight though, GSP, man, I thought in the fight he showed all the years of experience. So when he was sitting there promoting the fight, saying that he thought he was the best he had ever been, based on his performance and seeing him even go through some adversity, I would have to agree. He looked great considering how long he had been out and moving up. And granted, I get Bisping, well, at the same time, what, Bisping's the champ. I was about to say, Bisping's older and maybe not the hardest fight. I was about to say maybe he's not the hardest fight, but still, it wasn't an easy fight. It still was. He was giving him trouble.
Well, I guess the thing is now, what do you think about the match that looks like is going to happen is GSP and Whitaker, right?
Yeah, that's what should happen.
I mean, what do you think about that fight? That's an interesting fight because Whitaker's actually not as big as some of the bigger guys in that weight class.
Whitaker used to be a welterweight.
Right.
And Whitaker, the difference between him and Bisping is youth, speed, and really the knockout power, man. But you know what? GSP has always fought people with power. They were dangerous. Very easily they could have caught him with something. At this point, I'm done. Doubting GSP, especially now. I used to.
Right.
They used to always have me worried when he'd fight these guys that were like killers. I think he has all the tools and knowledge to beat Whitaker, but to me, Whitaker is way more dangerous than Bisping.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think he is, especially the speed, man. The speed's going to be
it's huge. And
the biggest thing. And
the
that takedown defense looked pretty damn solid with Romero.
right. So
He did struggle though. I mean, he was taken down. Like,
he had to get surgery with his legs from those little
yeah,
kicks that
yeah.
Romero was throwing that he kind of abandoned. Uh, is it fair to say that GSP's probably, if there's always going to be the debate on who's the greatest, but can we at least say that he has the best MMA takedowns?
Which is
Like,
fun. Well,
as someone who can just take anyone down and hold them down.
it's hard to say. I mean, I've seen John Jones do it to some Hall of Fame guys. It's between them two, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you could have other people that come to mind, but I
Yeah,
mean, like, and here's the thing: John Jones had some kind of wrestling background. GSP
yeah. He
did
wrestled
not.
all the way through college.
GSP
Yeah,
doesn't. What's weird about GSP is he doesn't even have a wrestling background, and I, a lot of people talk about his takedowns, and it's the timing. His timing's so
yeah.
perfect.
And unlike
It's
a lot of wrestlers, his stand up is pretty damn well rounded, so he can set those takedowns up. You know.
he just always knows when to shoot. You never see him. You see a lot of people shoot, and it's either telegraphed, like Damian Mai's. His shoots are telegraphed. People know he's going for it, or
Because
you
he's
know,
always going.
or they go for it and someone just shrugs them off. You don't see someone just shrugging GSP off when he shoots. He
Well,
shoots and gets it.
no, and he's too strong too. Like
I'm just saying, like, he knows when to do it, and a lot of it's when his opponents are swinging, and he just changes levels and gets it. It's
yeah.
it's really impressive in my opinion.
I mean, that's why he's the goat.
I remember I remember Rashad and Sonnen
Yeah,
because they had trained with GSP some,
yeah,
and this is when GSP was welterweight champ, and they just talking about how he manhandled them. He's a freak,
yeah.
really is. It's athletic freak. Even I mean, he's even had like big surgeries on his legs too. I think really him taking the time off because he was able to throw more kicks too to let his body heal.
Yeah,
Um,
he could heal up. He didn't take any damage, and it's like Rogan was saying at the end of the pay per view. He stayed in shape the whole 4 years. He took
yeah,
care of it.
he still went to the gym. I
Yeah,
think too, he was at a point where people were constantly wanting to fight him and gunning for him that he got to a point where maybe he was dreading to fight or is more of a chore.
there was so much pressure building that you could tell like he was just mentally exhausted.
Well, I'm saying it felt like mentally him coming back, he was coming back because he wanted to. Whereas towards
Yeah,
the end, it was like he didn't want to fight. He
yeah,
was tired of doing it. You know what I mean? Whereas now, like he was like he realized like, no, this is what I love. And I'm in a better place where I want to come back. I want to fight, and it also helps that now MMA fighters are making more than they've ever made.
yeah.
And he used to be one of UFC's pay-per-view kings.
He came back at a really good time for them with Connor being doing boxing and Ronda being gone. They really
They
needed
needed him, and
one of
even
the star. I'm curious to
Bisping.
see what the pay per view sales end up being on this.
Dana said it's already over 1 million.
I figured it would be about 1 million at least. That's kind of what I was
Yeah, he
thinking.
said it was over 1 million for sure. Um, really, just I don't know how that all works, but everyone's online talking about the card. I would see maybe they get more money afterwards.
Yeah, yeah,
Because can't people buy them again to rewatch and stuff?
yeah. I mean that won't count towards the initial.
The the first day.
like the
But
lot.
the
How many people watched it live?
right. But as far as how
But
much money they
obviously,
made,
obviously they're gonna sell because afterwards you can buy it, I think, and it just replays it over and over again.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Then obviously it'll be on Fight Pass
you,
in
you
a
know
month or
what?
so.
Bisbing said that if it's the UFC, if he's the UFC and he's thinking just as a business, they should want GSP to win.
Well,
Just be,
yeah,
just be from a marketing standpoint. I
yeah.
mean, really,
Well, something finally broke their way. Honestly, they've been having some rough breaks on the business end of stuff, like with Connor doing boxing and Ronda being gone, and some of the
it's
marketable
not just
guys
being gone.
leaving.
She was losing, and
Well,
then
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like marketable fighter, they're one of their top two most marketable
John
fighters
Jones,
losing. John Jones, yeah, John was supposed to be
he's
the guy.
ruined his career, so they don't have him, and he was a big star.
What
Um,
about polar opposites, GSP and John Jones?
and
But let's
then
not get
then
into
then Anderson Silva's old. Really, he should be
he
retired.
fading.
So
Yeah,
the moment of him being in his prime and being at a time where they're making the most money, they didn't line up. You see what I'm saying? Whereas
at this point they're
GSP,
using Anderson Silva, and I'm sure you've noticed this. It's like a little bit off topic, I guess, but like they're using him in new markets to like headline the show. It's like they put him on these foreign cards where they can, they're putting. Was it in China where he's headlining?
Shanghai
Yeah,
against
like
Gaslam.
that. By them putting that big name there, it's going to guarantee that at least people show up. Like the stadium will be full because it'll be like, holy shit! Like think about it. If Anderson Silva came to New Orleans, wouldn't you want to go? You know what I mean? Like.
I don't know, man. Every time he fights, I'm like, please retire.
Okay, well, I get it. Like,
I
if
don't want to
literally
see
there
it.
had never, okay, like if there had never been like a UFC ever, 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 and it's the first time, and then that's the headliner, of course the locals are gonna go. You know what I mean?
True. What I'm saying though is like GSP is in a situation where he can still take advantage of the money situation, whereas
Yeah.
Anderson being out of his prime, being in his 40s, like his moment of being like the biggest star in the UFC, making all this money, they just didn't line up. Like
No,
imagine
no. This
being
isn't Bellator.
imagine being the older fighters too, seeing what's happening now in the sport. You would almost be a little bitter, right? Like if I'm,
Yeah, that
if I'm Chuck and I'm seeing all the money they're making, like man, I wish the sport was this big when I was the champ.
that happens to every sport, though. What do you think Hoist felt like watching Chuck? Why do you think he came back to fight Matt Hughes? He wanted that money that they were getting in. A lot of
Right.
money.
Well, it's the same thing with BJ coming back. He's seen,
Yeah,
all the money people making.
yeah.
He wanted a piece of
It's
it.
happened to old baseball guys, old football guys, old basketball guys. Like
Man, I think
the
really
nature
the
of
the
it.
biggest thing to take away from this card, other than the crazy Rose and JJ fight, which was like the just big shock, is just how calculated GSP is and how he's the decisions he's made for his career.
Yeah,
I think all fighters up and
he's a
coming.
shining example. It
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be
Like for me, like if you're a fighter and or you're wanting to become a fighter, he's like the go-to example on like as far as to aim to be, as far as like
yeah.
just all the decisions he made, even when he chose to retire, you know, retiring with the belt or retiring right when he knew he wasn't, that it was bound to happen. If he's, let's be honest, if he had stayed, he probably would have fell
He
off
would
and lost,
he
and
would have lost at some
we would
point.
have. He knew himself
Yeah,
enough to know that he needed a break,
yeah.
whereas some
To,
people
to
don't.
take it 9 title defenses, one away from what the record was at the time, to just say screw it, I'm not even going to pursue that. I'm retiring. Like that says a lot about where he was at the time.
Well, didn't he had the belt too for and let me pull it. I'm gonna just pull it up real quick. His record.
He was he was one short of Anderson when
Well,
he retired.
what I'm saying though is
Silence.
I'm looking at it real quick. Oh, okay. So his first title defense was Sarah.
Yeah, that was the first time he had the belt,
Okay,
and he
but
lost.
he did. What I was wondering was when he got the belt the first time if he defended it, because I was about to
Yeah, no,
say
no.
then it would have looked like okay he went on to. Dude, just looking at his record, it's
I mean,
ridiculous.
if you look at it from that perspective, he has the same amount of title wins because he won the belt twice. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, no, well, I'm just saying, just the idea of having the belt and defending it,
Yeah,
that
and
pressure.
one he's a 3-time champion now in 2 different weight classes. He's his
Dude, I'm
by
looking at
the
his record.
by the end of
The
his
Matt Sarah
career.
loss looks so funny, but you know what? This is another example where you can be the best and you still can get caught. You know,
Yeah,
you
he's
know.
his only 2 losses. Like his resume is ridiculous at this
Well,
point.
the great thing though is he avenged his losses.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's
He finished
redeemed
them.
his only 2 losses. He's got he's got three-time champion at 2 different weight. At this point, his resume by the end, like by the time he has his last fight, his introduction is going to be longer than Randy Couture's was. Like
Uh,
it's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, but what I was gonna say is like, you see these fighters saying, "I'm gonna, fight and be undefeated." If you look at GSP's record, who's one of the best in the sport, um, it shows like on any given night, man, you could still lose. Because looking at his record, he beat so many great fighters, and for him to get caught by Matt Serra, you know, all the other people could have caught him. So
Yeah,
it just means that you got to realize you're human. You're not
and then losing to
invincible
Matt Hughes. I mean, he was young, and Matt Hughes was the greatest champion at that weight
at
class
the
at that.
time.
Yeah, and still is like a top 10 guy. I feel like pound for pound. That's how crazy welterweight is with dominant champion. But you know what? Last note, you should have went to MMA because I mean apparently his kryptonite is dude's named Matt. So
Oh god, I never made that correlation, but that's hilarious.
he can't beat a Matt.
He can't
Not
beat him,
the
Matt,
first time
man. Not the first
anyway.
time. So
He hasn't learned.
what I do is I beat him the first time and I don't allow
You
him to have the
never fight him
rematch.
again.
I just be like, I'm retiring.
He's just like, stop running from me. And you're like, you damn right.
All right, so that's what we thought about the fights. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below. See y'all next time.
Woo!